You'll notice a couple of things. I gave 2 handouts. One was the quiz. Don't get too discouraged. It was qualitatively more difficult, as the both of you know already, than the ones that were before. I want to stretch. I want to test to see where we're at. The other one, I hope, will be a good help to you. It is on the website, and it is in color on the website, so your endings are in red, signifying what is different, morphologically speaking, about the paradigms. So that'll help you memorize better, or at the very least, have a chart in front of you with everything that we've learned so far. I know that when I was taking Greek as a student, that I would very often not learn anything until test day came, and then I'd have to go through the book from the very beginning and write out all the paradigms by hand in order to rememorize everything. So this may serve you a little bit better in that instead of using the time to write it out, you have it in front of you, not as a cheat sheet, don't do that, but as a means to memorize easier. And I hope to keep this updated weekly, bi-weekly, whatever seems reasonable. This week we'll be learning 2 new verb forms, so it will be a great help for you there, because now we'll have the declensions, and we don't want to get those mixed up with our verb forms that will be coming on. Okay? All right, and let's open up with some of the exercises from last week. We finished 1 through 4, I believe, and then we were going to do, for homework, 5 through 10, if I recall.
6 through 10.
6 through 10.
That's what was on the website.
Okay. 6 through 10 works. Does anybody want to take a stab at number 6?
Sure. All right, so I guess I'll read through it first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Kainos, parabolas, megusin, koi, agathoi, pathetai, kai, tois, pistois, kai, tais, pistis.
Good.
So kainos is new in the genitive, which goes with parabolas, which is parable in the genitive. Legusin is they say,
Good.
or they speak. Hoi agathoi is the good,
Mm-hmm.
and that's in the nominative. Nominative plural,
It is.
okay, which goes with pathetai, which is also the nominative plural. Kai is in, the pistois is the faithful masculine, katais, pistis, and the faithful feminine. So I translated it as the good prophets speak of a new parable to the faithful men and faithful women.
Okay, now you have, I wanted to see how you were going to translate that before I did any corrections. You have kainos, parabolas, and you said this is genitive and you translated it as singular, right?
Correct.
Is there another form that has the os ending that might make a little more sense here? So here the way that you've translated it makes perfect sense in English, but this form takes another form that might help it a little bit, because right now we've got a subject, a verb, and a direct object, a compound direct object. but we don't have not a compound indirect object, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So what are the,
It could be accusative,
yes.
plural.
Mhm.
So it would be the good prophets speak new parables to the faithful men.
Good, yes. Absolutely perfect. See how that happened? Any questions on that one?
So you're saying it's not genitive, you're saying that it's accusative?
It is. This is one of those slightly confusing times because, we've learned that the typical word order is verb, subject, and object, but right now we have object, verb, subject. So we've got the object being fronted for emphasis, most likely. So there are new parables that are being taught. We would do the same thing in English. I mean, we can if we wanted to front that. We'd say new parables the prophets speak to faithful men and faithful women. Do you have any questions about hoi agathoi prophetai? First question I have for you about that is what kind of construction is it?
Is that attributive?
It is. It's an attributive adjective. We have the definite article with with the adjective as opposed to with the noun, or not with the adjective, as we learned last week. Now there was one little thing that I did want to clarify from last week. You know those rules that I gave you. If the article is with the adjective, then it's going to be attributive. If it's not with the adjective, it will be predicate if there is an article. There's a construction here that didn't trip you up at all when you translated it, which is great. It means that this oversight on my part you were able to work through. But kainos parabolos, right? That doesn't fit into any of those rules I gave you. There's no article because it is a article-less and indefinite construction. That's possible as well to have a or new parables as opposed to the new parables. And in some instances, very, very rarely can be predicate. Like, parables are new, but it's very rare. And you'd be able to determine that based on context. So just stick with the rules that I gave you, and when you see this, for the most part, you can translate it as attributive as opposed to predicate. Yes?
I know that it says men and women, but the phrase can be the good prophets speak new parables to the faithful.
Yeah, you could do that, but it seems as if the author, or obviously Dave Black here, has wanted you to see that is both men and women by saying it in the masculine and then in the feminine. So that was intentional on his part or on the biblical author's part if we come to an instance like that in the Bible.
Or it says in the Bible.
Not in this particular instance, but sometimes there'll be a substantive in the masculine and a substantive in the feminine in order to, yeah. More often though, you would see something like adelphoi, like brothers being used to describe both brothers and sisters, or a masculine plural that incorporates or also includes women within it. So it's taken holistically. All right, number 7.
Legamen, agathus, lagus, tois, agathois, apostolos.
Good.
We speak good words to the good apostles.
Very good. Questions on that? So both of those adjectival phrases there were attributive, good words to good apostles.
Where is intended the?
Where is the?
The.
So good words, we speak good words to thee, and that is in the tois. Tois is your article.
Tois, pistois, kai, tas, pistas. So, ze, or z. Oh, Messias, tes, basilias.
Yep.
The Messiah of the kingdom saves the faithful men and the faithful women.
Yes. Questions on that? Again, we see that the direct object is fronted here. He's giving you some variety so that you see that that can take place as well. It's confusing for us a lot of the times. We have to go to the very end of the sentence in order to find out what the subject is. And in English, it's typically at the beginning. Number 9.
Hi, agathe, blepse, tas, agathos. I don't know.
Hemeros.
Hemaros, tas, basilias, agares?
Agapes.
Okay. The good will see the kingdom, or I didn't do well on this one.
No, that's not a problem. So let's take it apart. This one is a little more tricky. This is better. Okay, agate,
Yeah. It's easy.
let's see. Let's say.
That's
No,
fine.
let's say. Let's say plus R. Case possibly us.
And let's say it's future, right?
It is.
Opposition from potential concepts.
All right, what did I say last week would be a very easy way to dissect your sentence in order to make it more manageable? Remember?
Find the subject, the nominative.
Good, so where's the subject or the nominative?
It was hi, agathe.
Hey, Agatha, good. So here is our subject. Where is our verb?
The blepse.
All right. Where is our direct object?
Emerus.
What now?
Emerus.
Amoros? Yes? Good. Now, when we look for all of these things, what now?
It's the only noun of that.
It is. Well, it's not. We
the
still have.
Agathos.
So when we do this, we need to incorporate all of the different features of each one of those things, all the features that are pertain to the subject, because it can be a compound subject, all the features that pertain to the direct object. So while this is the true direct object, it also has an adjectival phrase with it. And then what is this? Tes basileas agapes. It's genitive.
Direct object.
Not a direct object or an indirect object, but it is the,
It's in the clause. Possessive.
it happens to be possessive, I believe so, but more importantly, before defining that relationship, it depends on this. It's further describing this part of the phrase. So let's start to translate with our subject. What now?
The good women?
Right, that's the first thing, the good woman. And where do we get woman from?
The Ada on the end of the I.
Good. So we might typically expect what?
Feminine.
Agapas. Because that's the default form, right? The masculine singular is your default form.
Feminine.
So it's the good woman. And what does the good woman do?
Will see.
Will see. Very good. What will she see?
The day.
The good days.
The good days. And why is it the good days? We have the article with
Of the king.
The adjective.
the adjective. And it's the good days of what?
The
Beloved.
Of the good kingdom.
Good. Oh, you got, I got
Where
this.
do you have?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're right.
What? Did I do something?
That was the
Agapes.
kingdom of love.
I got the
Yeah.
love.
Yes.
The
Us
love.
Yes.
was genitive, so it's
You're good so far.
Oh, no, I'm not good. That's what's confusing me. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. It's aga. Okay. Agathos. That's what was wrong. Yes. So the good woman will see the good days of the kingdom of love. Does that make sense? I guess you could even say this as lovely kingdom, but that's more of a adverb. And if you wanted to say beloved kingdom, it would be, what is that? Agape? For beloved, we've had that word.
It's the second word in duplicate. Second word is okay.
Yes, agapetas.
How would you
Nice.
say of the lovely kingdom? How would you distinguish, because it'd still be in the same form?
I think you can say it that way, but you might be able to say it.
So that's the format.
I'm not going to say definitively. I
Okay.
think that there is an adverbial form of agapos, which
Okay.
would be agapos, but I'm not entirely certain.
Lovely is an adjective. Is lovely an adjective?
Yeah. that's
Yes,
true.
yes, so
Okay.
you can say it
So
this
you-
way. Or wait, no, that's what the,
But the S on the end of agape is.
It's-
pace. One second, let me
It's
think.
genitive.
The article, okay,
Genitive and the pure Ada.
you would have to do, say the lovely kingdom. You would have to say, right?
So you
But
just
wait.
change the order?
The bacillus or bacillias ends in alpha sigma, so it doesn't match the article or the adverb. Wouldn't you have to change it to ace to make it not substantive?
Because basileos is in agreement. Basileos is genitive, singular, and feminine. And this is as well.
So they don't have to match in terms of pure alpha, pure eta, or mixed.
No.
Across the string.
No.
Yeah, it depends on the word group, right?
Yes, it does. So you can't change this at all. It has epsilon, iota, or rho, being iota in this instance, so it has to be pure alpha. So when you're matching declensions, or when you're in agreement with one another, you have to match in case number and gender, not in form. That's why we could have, like the next example here is Hi Sophie, Agatha. Oh no, that's not what I was trying to get across. What was I trying to get across? We already had an example where the forms were mismatched, which was page 47, exercise 6, where we had hoi agathoi prophetai. We had an I ending and the oi ending, but prophetai is masculine, so it still is an agreement, even though it's in a different declension altogether. Does that make sense?
Easy for this Q&A.
Okay. Any other questions? That was a little more difficult than I had expected. Number 10.
Hoi, adelphoi, trotoi, kai, hoi, duloi, eskatoi.
Good.
If I could do just caveman talk here, the brothers, faithful, so I'm gonna say the faithful brothers.
It's not pistos, is it? That's protoi. So
Oh, I'm sorry, protoi, yeah, the first brother.
good,
Yeah,
like a prototype.
right. But I'm trying to see if it's plural. Yeah. It is, yeah. The first brothers.
Couldn't you say the brothers are first and the slaves are
Will
last?
speak.
Yes.
Will speak.
The articles with the
Speak. The first brothers speak.
Where is speak? I'm getting you to
Yeah.
suss out
Like
what's
Goosen.
wrong here.
Slaves are last.
Legusin.
Where is Lagusin?
Number 11.
Your
No, you jumped.
eyes
You
are
were
jumping.
doing-
Oh, my eyes fuck up. I'm so sorry. I'll just pick out words on the page. And out there.
Hey, that's right.
Okay. The first brothers and the last servants.
Okay, now I wanted you to get through that so that you would see you don't have a verb there. So
Yeah.
you might want to reevaluate the way that we've taken that adjectival phrase, right?
Okay.
Right, right.
So where is the article? Is it with the adjective or is it with the noun?
It's with the noun.
Okay? So there is no article with the adjective.
Right.
What were your three different options for adjectival phrases? We had the...
Predicate, attributive, and the substantive.
And which one is this?
Okay. This is looking substantive. There's no,
You have an adjective and a verb, and a noun.
right.
You have the article with the noun.
Okay.
When the article is with the noun, not with the adjective, that is, it is predicate.
Okay.
We translate the attributive as the good brothers, and the predicate we would translate as the brothers
Are good.
are good.
Okay.
And,
Our first.
or, sorry, are first. The brothers are first.
Okay. And the servants are last.
Good.
Okay.
My mind is not working very quickly this evening, so I'm sorry.
Okay.
Did you guys want to do any more in that lesson? Or do you want to go to the next lesson? How about we do a couple more to get comfortable? Number 11.
Well, since I did half of it. I, Sophie, Agatha, Legusin. And here we have the wise and good, and then they speak. So, and the article is on the adjective. So it is an attributive.
The article is with the adjective, it is.
Okay. And then, so the good, wise, so we have to, from the wise, we have to determine what it is. It's a plural and feminine.
Let me stop you in your tracks.
Sorry, the wise women are speaking.
Yes,
Thank you.
well, the wise women are speaking,
No,
yes. Or, not
good.
love,
Good.
but good. Yeah, those two are very, very similar, agapas and agathos.
Oh, so since it's neuter, it's good things. The wise women are good
Yes.
things. Okay.
So here's something that, when I was looking through that, I was having the same problem as you were just now for some reason. But what do we remember? What do we need to remember about adjectives with their nouns?
It's attributive.
Well, okay, so we've got those three different categories.
They're gonna agree.
and the adjective
Yes,
has-
yes. So we do have those three different elements. We do have the attributive, which is the good brothers, the predicate, the brothers are good, and the substantive, the good ones. But we also have to remember, but before those relationships can even take place, adjectives in their relationship to their nouns, we know that it is in relationship to that noun based upon agreement in the following:
Gender, number, case.
gender, number, and case. So we can't say, in this particular instance, the wise women are good, because agatha would have to be
Agathai.
agathai, right? Does that make sense?
So then, what
So then the translation here, and he tricked you here on purpose, this is why he put that there, is the wise women speak or are speaking good things. He put two substantive adjectives right next to one another and tried to make you think that they were in agreement. We have to be very careful about our cases. And our
So what
genders.
did you say that you said?
The wise women
Yeah.
speak good things.
Okay.
Number 12, unless we have more questions about 11.
Take 12. Aistain, Sunagogen, Aksusen, Hoi, Dekaioi, Tus, Akathartos.
Mhm.
So ace would be in or into the synagogue, and that's in the accusative, singular. Aksusen is they will hear.
Yes.
Hoi Dikaioi is the what's that?
Dikaios? Yes.
Okay, thanks. Righteousness.
Or dikaiosune is righteousness, and dikaios is righteous.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's going to be an adjective, which is going to modify akathartus. also don't know.
Unclean.
Unclean. Okay, so that would be. Um, I'm not sure. So we'll look for the nominative first.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the Tikaioi.
Good.
So it's not an adjective?
It is an adjective.
Okay. Oh, but it's probably, okay, so it's probably being used in
That was a good catch on the Oxusen times word.
the, yeah, I had to think that.
That was very, will here, that's.
Mm-hmm.
Wait. Isn't it I will leave?
Yes, lead. He was commenting on the future part, and I missed the translation part.
What is?
Oh, I got the,
It's not I will hear, I will lead.
It's I will
You said I will
lead.
lead?
oh,
It's not a
okay.
kuo.
What was?
Okay.
I will lead.
So they will,
That makes sense. He said it with such confidence, so it's gotta get some credit for that.
yeah.
Akuo is to hear, Ago is to
Yeah,
lead.
yeah.
Isn't it, they will lead?
Yes?
Okay.
But who is the they?
They is Tikaioi.
Good. Precisely.
Which is substantive.
Mm-hmm.
So for our translation, we're going to start out with the righteous will lead.
So who will they lead? The unclean into the synagogue. Mhm. Or you could do it a little more fleshed out, which would be the righteous ones will lead the unclean or the unclean ones into the synagogue. Let's try one more and then we will go on to lesson 7.
Which one, Jake? Could you pick it?
Oh, just the next one.
13.
Yes.
Has everybody else gone? Has Ingrid Sprecher gone?
Yeah, Ingrid, you go.
If not, I'll go Ingrid. Really? Really? Okay, maybe it's cold. That's cold. Have you done the quiz already? Yes. Okay.
Just the two of them.
Okay. Legai,
Okay.
lege, ho apostolos, to curia,
To Kuriu.
tu curiu, agathe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Parapole, tois, agapetois, mathetes. Okay, so I think the apostle is the nominative, or subject, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the apostle, is that of the good Lord, of the beloved Lord?
Look at Agathane again. Kuriu Agathane.
Where's my help? Okay. Okay. All right. So the apostle says to the Lord.
You had everything right,
Oh,
with the
okay.
exception
The
of
apostle of the Lord.
yes,
Okay. Apostle of the Lord says
yes.
good parables.
Parabalain. Ain verse is as.
Okay. Speaks a good parable
Good.
to the beloved disciples.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, I got it. You guys had to help me all the way through that. Ingrid would have had it.
Learning and community.
Yeah.
So yeah, the apostle of the Lord, that was a good catch that you saw that the genitive went with the apostle. Just remember, again, the agreement in case, number, and
Right.
gender, which is what got you tripped up with the agape. All right. And we will
This guy's good together.
stop at lesson 6, so far as the translations are concerned. I hesitate to tell you that if you need extra practice, translate all of the stuff that we haven't translated in class. You can email me for the answers, but if you haven't figured it out yet, they're in the back of the book.
Key.
Yeah, who did
That means
that?
the reading list asked the entire class.
So it's on page 221
Yeah. Go to it.
and
like,
following.
big marker.
I hate to tell you that, I probably should have kept that to myself. I hate that he actually has it in here, but
I don't. I can double check myself.
he only has answers up to lesson 17, so I don't know why he stopped there. That's all right. So if you need to do those extra practices, then do them and check yourself against the back of the book. If you need any further explanation on the answers, you're welcome to ask. Just make sure you don't go to the answers first, or even when you run into difficulties, try to figure them out before you go to the back. Okay, so we have covered so far first, second declension, definite articles, future, and present. Am I missing anything there? And we've all survived, right? For the most part.
Close.
That is the foundation. And you've learned most of the foundation. That's not to say that there's not a long journey to go from there. But the foundation has now been learned. You understand the concepts of the declensions. You understand the concepts of the verbal system. Now we're just going to start to build on that with a couple more endings. Here is, you want the good news or the bad news first?
Bad news first.
Bad news first is that you have 2 new forms to memorize. You're going to learn today the imperfect form of the verb and the aorist form of the verb. The good news is your vocabulary, while it has been more than extensive in the last couple of lessons, about 50 words or so, if you turn to 55, it looks overwhelming because it spans 55 to 56. But here is the good news. Section A of that vocabulary are the only new words. So you have 8 words to memorize this week for vocabulary. From 50 to 8. All the rest of that there is giving you the principal part form of each one of those verbs. And most of that information you don't really need to know because you learned that in the way that the verb is conjugated this week. So he's just giving those out to you so that you can see it repetitively in your mind and on the page. But otherwise, you got 8 words to learn so far as vocabulary is concerned. Bad news is you have a new set of endings. All right, if you're on page 49, he gives you, before we get to what he gives you, we've had the primary, what are called the primary active endings so far. All right, you know, we may not have been calling them by that, but that's what they have been. First singular, second singular, third singular. What have they been? They're the only names you've learned so far. So whether you know the name for the category,
Oh.
you should know them. Yes, oh. How about, what now?
Ace?
Somebody else.
A.
Somebody else.
Men.
Min, or if you wanted to include the vowel with it, amen. Good. And then usen. So we have o, ace, a, amen or min, ete or te, usen. Those are your primary active endings. They've been applied to your present active indicative and your future active indicative. Now we will cover the secondary active And they are nu, sigma, nu or nothing, min, te, on, or son. I don't like memorizing them this way, personally. I like to be able to go through the chart in my head, and it's difficult to do that with just consonants. So there's going to be a little more memorization if you do it my way, but I think that it helps to also eliminate some of the anomalies. The way that I'll teach you to memorize them is if you flip the next page, is just to teach you the endings, how they appear on your actual imperfect and aorist verbs. So your imperfect verb,
It's pretty similar to the primary active.
what now?
I said it was pretty close to the primary active,
Yes, it does, with the exception of the singulars.
except where it's different.
Well, so the imperfect active we have on, s, and then or the movable nu. Then we have the same endings that we've already memorized for the plural. Min, te, except for this one, which now becomes on. Now the reason this is in as opposed to on up there is to distinguish it from on and on. So do recognize that you have third plural as the same ending as your first singular. Yes?
How are those related to each other? I'm not saying
These two?
that. The secondary versus the imperfect.
I will get there. I'm just laying out the endings, and maybe this isn't the best way to do it, but this way they're on the board for you as we go. Your aorist active endings are very similar, even though they don't look like it. We have sa, sas, sin. Make sure I'm correct about that. Saman, sate, san. How much sense is this making? None. That's all right. All right, let's let it make a little more sense now. The imperfect form of the verb. When we had the present active, how did we translate that for a word like blepo?
Lepo, lepais, blepe.
Not the conjugation, just
I see.
right. So
Oh, okay.
if we were translating blepo, it would be I see. How did we translate blepso?
I will see.
I will see. This was our present tense. This is our future tense. All right, now so for our imperfect tense, it's going to look like sorry about that. Let's fix it. Le, on. And we're going to translate that.
I was seeing.
What?
I was seeing.
Yes, I was seeing.
You said Greek before.
I had English before, buddy.
Okay, so what is the difference between, maybe this would help us a little bit. We could translate this in two different ways. We could translate it as I see or I am seeing. And the difference between the imperfect and the present. So this could have the continuative aspect, or it could just be seen somewhat as a whole, I see versus I am seeing. This is past. So this has a past tense in English. Some scholars will debate that, but I'm still here. It's past tense with continuative aspect, or progressive aspect, so to speak. Some sort of a line in the past tense. I was seeing. That's your imperfect. Your aorist is now going to be ble, son. No, sorry. Lepsa. Which is simple past. I saw.
There's something else important about the aorist when you interpret. What is that?
There's all kinds of different things that are important about the aorist, and for the sake of everybody's minds here, because I still haven't gotten my mind wrapped around the different debates, because the aorist tense is one of the most debated tenses in the Greek. We'll just leave it at simple past action, punctiliar. So we see it as sort of a dot there. There are nuances, and we'll get into some of those different nuances of the aorist. Like it can be the grass withers, for instance, would be in the aorist. We might want to look at that and say, well, it's past tense, so the grass withered. But no, it has a holistic sort of an axiomatic statement, nuance, universal truth. The grass withers. But for simplicity's sake, we have I see for the present, I will see for the future, I was seeing for the imperfect, and I saw for the aorist. Yes.
What's the secondary active?
Yeah, you said only two, though.
What now?
You said only two new forms. Isn't this three?
Two what now?
New forms.
No, you just have the imperfect and the aorist. These are the base forms for all of your verbs that fall underneath the category of second active verbs, secondary active verbs.
Have we learned them yet?
We are learning them now, imperfect and aorist. And it's a little difficult to see because on is here, but then it drops the new when it gets to saw, and it's even more difficult to see because here we can have it blank as in so no new, or we can have the new, and here we can have the same thing. It's difficult because while they do fall underneath the secondary active endings, those aren't as solid of a paradigm as our primary active, which follow the same endings routinely. Oase, aminete, usen.
So these two are like a subset or expression of the secondary active.
Yes,
They fall under that umbrella.
they fell under that umbrella.
Okay.
And if it's helpful for you, like your present and your future fell underneath the umbrella of the primary active endings.
So you'll never have a secondary ending for a present or future.
Right,
Oh. That helps.
right.
So
And we'll do the same thing for your passive, your middle and your passive endings. There'll be primary middle passive endings and secondary middle passive endings. And certain verbs fall under, verb tenses fall under the category or the umbrella of secondary active or passive or etc. Somebody was an asset.
for the imperfect, epilepsomen,
Mm-hmm.
what is the secondary active ending?
Eplep.
You said they're hard to
On.
see.
The secondary active ending is your on ending,
Okay.
which corresponds to your on ending.
Okay.
We have a couple of other elements going on here, as I'm sure you see in those verbs. We'll get there as soon as we wrap our heads around just the endings. Yes?
So is the F sort of a tip off as to what it is? That prefix? The
It is.
before the blood.
And that's one of the things that we are going to get to. What Dr. Black specifically, and I'm in agreement with, calls this ending is the past time morpheme. So you see that at the front. It's also called an augment. He calls it the augment and or the past time morpheme. So it indicates to you that the verb that you're looking at is going to be in the past time. So as soon as you see eblepon or the augment at the front of your verb, you're going to know that it's going to fall under either the aorist or the imperfect verb. So that helps. We've got 4 verb forms now, and we see an epsilon there in the front, and we know, hey, I can eliminate present and future. And then I have a way to further eliminate it down to your aorist or your imperfect. Questions here? All right. Keep those endings up. You have a verb, luo. Get rid of this. Luo is your verb. And I want to conjugate that in the present active indicative. How would I conjugate that in the first singular?
Luo?
Yeah, that was a trick question.
Yeah.
Present.
Okay.
Luo. So in the present active indicative, we learn the verb in that form in our vocabulary. Right? So it's I lose. If I wanted to conjugate it in the future of the first person singular, how do I do that? Right, so let's go through the steps for each different part of it though.
Get the
So
stem.
we've got the stem, which is
Lu.
lu. Then we add what? Sigma, which is the future time morpheme. And then we add what? In the ending. We call it the person number suffix, so O. Now, we are introducing the new verb, which is imperfect. We're going to start with the prefix, which you've already seen here. And we called that one of 2 things, I already said it,
Last time working.
or augment. Good, so the past time morpheme or the augment. So epsilon plus the
Stem.
stem, which is lu, plus
Another sigma.
no sigma here,
Oh, which one is this? Imperfect.
imperfect.
Oh,
The ending.
Yes.
The ending.
Then we add our secondary active person number suffix. So that would be, in this instance, on.
Is that an omega at the
Where?
the
Yeah.
future?
Future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just checking.
It's supposed to be. So for the imperfect, we have our past time morpheme, or our augment. We add our stem, and then we add our person number suffix for the imperfect, which is the secondary active endings. On, s, n, min, te, on, or amen, eten. Now, forming our aorist, what are we going to do?
Last time
Add
working.
that morpheme,
Yep. Then we add what?
the stem,
The stem, which is,
blue,
and then we add what? You don't know this yet.
isn't
You
it?
do. We add a sigma alpha. We add a sigma alpha. The only exception in the aorist where you don't add a sigma alpha is your third singular. But all of the rest of them have the connecting vowel as an alpha. So the way that I was taught to learn this is to just say aorist.
Mhm. I see.
I know that the parallel is not there because it's saw if we were pronouncing it, but just saw aorist. Just say aorist. So when you see sigma alpha, you're going to know to just say aorist.
Except for the first person.
Except for the
Single.
the third singular.
There's-
And we know that even when we have the third singular, that we have the epsilon, and then we have the sigma. He calls the sigma the aorist, aorist aspect morpheme. Obviously, in terms of linguistics and in terms of technical definition, this is right. Just the sigma is the aorist aspect morpheme. But so far as mnemonic devices are concerned, and so far as learning it is concerned, I like to always pair the sigma with the alpha and say, here is your only exception, because I don't want you to get the sigma confused with the sigma of the future.
Which we won't as long as there's an epsilon.
Epsilon. Mm-hmm. And you still can't anyway, because remember the future falls under what set of endings?
First thing.
First set, which would have A as your ending, not A or N. We're going to take a break. So
So the
detox just a bit. We will get back and we'll do exactly what we did when we first learned the verbs. I'll give you verbs and we're going to parse them out a good number of times. Okay, so here's the good thing. This is probably one of the longer chapters. That's not the good thing, but the good thing is that it's always building on something that you've already learned. We will get to just sitting there and doing a little bit of conjugation in just 1 second. But you have what's called the amalgamation of the aorist tense. Big word, small concept that we've already covered, right? We saw this in the future tense when you add a sigma to a verb with certain letters right behind that sigma, it amalgamates into a different letter. So if a kappa, gamma, or key combined with a sigma, we get a xi. If a p, bait, phi, or sigma or p, bait, beta.
I made that mistake myself.
Yep, slipping into my Hebrew here. Beta, phi is combined with a sigma, we get a psi. Tau, delta, theta combined with a sigma, we get a sigma. So we've already covered that. Just a refresher that also takes place in the aorist tense. And he has these examples here. Keruso, which is from the root keruk. When you have that combined into the aorist tense, we have keruksa. Blepo, P added to a sigma. Blepso, or eblepsa in this instance. And patho, theta drops out. We still have the sigma, epesa. Any questions there? Number 5, 51, paragraph 51, more on the augment. This can be boiled down quite quickly. The most basic form of your augment is the epsilon. All right, we just learned that. What happens, though, in an instance like pa, mar, tano? What does that word mean? Not quite, it's a verb. So, yes, so I sin. What happens when we have a
Rough breathing one?
just a vowel in the front of the word? You add a epsilon to the vowel. Well, it's not going to become ea martano. It's going to become a hey. Sorry, this is a rough reading mark. What am I talking about? Hey martano. So we have a lengthening of our basic letter at the front. So if it's an epsilon or an alpha and an augment is being added to it, it lengthens to an eta.
Is that the only case?
No, there are a number of different
Oh.
verbs that start with a vowel. What are some other examples of it? None in this chapter. All right, moving on a little more quickly. We have a concept called the first aorist and the second aorist in the Greek. And this is probably going to be the concept that you're going to actually bring about more than anything else. In English, we have this as well, or something equivalent to it. We have the examples of take, took, for instance, as opposed to taked. I didn't take that piece of candy, I took that piece of candy. So the concept that this is illustrating is that the normal way of conjugating a verb in the past tense is not always followed by all verbs. We have irregular verbs. If you see his example there, lapon, or lapo rather, which means to leave. Lapo is its primary or its first principal part. That's how he calls it, or how Greek scholars call them, principal parts. In the aorist tense, we have what's called our second principal part, I think. So instead of, in your imperfect, you have elapon, we might think that it would become elapsa, right? But instead we have elipon. So while your first principal part was lape, and the second aorist, it becomes lip. Notice also when you go into the second aorist of the verb that you don't have those characteristic features that we had before, which is your just say aorist. So we drop the sigma alpha. We just use the secondary active endings. And the only reason we know that it is a second aorist verb is because we still have that augment and our root of the word is shifted. It's not as serious when we see words like lapo become lipo, or elipon rather. That's, you just lose one letter, you lose the epsilon. It's not as much of a shock. But if you look in that little footnote there, footnote 2 on page 53, notice that the verb lego becomes apon.
No.
That gets a little more annoying for us, doesn't it? Those are just verbs you have to learn.
Isn't that adon? Isn't that a delta?
Lego, apon. Now there is adon.
I saw. As I speak.
Page 53 at the top.
Yeah, I was at the bottom.
Oh, at the top.
Oh, is there something else at the bottom?
Yeah, there's a second footnote.
Yeah, there's a second.
Yes, yes. From horao, it becomes adon.
Okay.
I knew that was a form, but I was like, where are you seeing ADON? Because APON is here.
Yeah, footnote, I went to the bottom of the page.
Where a footnote belongs.
Yeah.
I did too, I saw.
So he gives you those different forms, so be aware of those. You've got your second aorist stems here, which are a little easier to see. Hamartano becomes Haymarton. I cannot pronounce anything. Hurisco becomes Huron. Lambano becomes Elaban. Pasco becomes Apathon. And Fugo becomes Efugon. Yes, Steve. Questions?
Oh,
Or
sure.
just pure frustration?
No. I'm gonna go in
You just
December
have
to
to
just memorize the New
memorize these
Testament. Great.
Yeah, and I'm sure my professor would tell me to memorize them by rote, but I've gotten by just recognizing them. So, you know, you see a hamartano, and it's going to appear in two different ways. It can appear as, I think he has this somewhere. Where is it? One of his notes. Yeah, on page 52 at the bottom. It can appear in two different forms. It can appear as Haymar Tesa, or as the second aorist form, Haymarton. But a lot of the second aorist forms are pretty straightforward. You know, you just lose a letter or two here. Most of the pronunciation is still the same. But as soon as you see that it has changed its form to the degree that it's no longer parallel to your lexical form, you know it's the second aorist form. Does that make sense?
So
Yes.
are we thinking of the first one as being more the regular verbs?
It
And
is.
the second is more irregular?
Correct.
Okay.
Irregularity means the changes they undergo.
Mhm.
They're different
Yes.
tenses. Okay.
The forms that don't take second aorist forms are conjugating regularly, which means it has an epsilon plus the stem plus the sigma alpha plus your ending. The second aorist form takes what seems to be, in our mind, an unpredictable change irregularly, and it just, you have to know the stem for the second aorist. His note there up at the top on 53 about apon from Lego, he says that those were at one point two separate verbs that have congealed into one verb because the other forms have fallen out of use, which is why Lego becomes apon, something completely unrelated. And you'll see other verbs like that later on. The verbs that you see that take place like that are so regular in the New Testament that you will very, very quickly learn them. Like apon occurs almost every other sentence in narrative. And he said, and he said, and he answered, and he said. You're going to see that form so much that you're just going to know it by heart.
Are we leaving caveman speak behind, or we can actually?
Well, we're still going to have those constructions. Those are basic constructions to the Greek
Yeah.
language. But yeah, we're going from being able to just say I am or speaking in the present tense to speaking in four different tenses.
Okay.
We still can't do any passive voice yet, but that'll be much later now. And you think that we're speaking caveman, but if you're talking about German and actual conversational German, you don't get to being able to fluently use the cases well until much later on. I mean, you learn them, but I've been learning German for a while now, and conjugating into the case is just, I don't know, it's beyond me for now. But you already are capable of reading that because you've learned the cases so well, hopefully. All right. Any other questions there? You're having a
Having a bad quiz day.
Did you grade it?
I was good till I realized it would say Ada,
How did you do?
period. Oops.
We're paying attention, we promise.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
So there's
Listen.
nothing different in how the second aorist is translated.
Right.
It's just a different set of endings.
Mhm.
Okay.
Just like I came and I went. Now, he gives the example of two different ways to conjugate the English form of to dive that are acceptable. I dived into the pool, or I dove into the pool. So there is no inherent difference in the way that those are understood. It's just two different ways of conjugating the past tense, or in this case, the aorist tense. No translational difference, just a different way of conjugating. Clear as mud? Wonderful.
On a rainy day.
All right, so let's conjugate a few verbs. Unless you have more questions. No. May not have been the best verb to choose to begin with, but so if we were conjugating didasco in the imperfect tense. What would we do to begin with?
Past time morpheme.
Well, we got our stem here. In conjugating, we find our past time morpheme, right? Or our epsilon plus our and
Your secondary ending.
which is
On.
Megan.
on. Let's recite these for a little bit. Let's do that. On, S, N, amen, ete, 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 on. How about the aorist now? Sa, sas, sin, samen, sate, san, sa, sas, sin, samen, sate, san, sa, sas, sin, samen, sate, san. All right. So now getting back to here. So we got a didaskon. Second singular. Yeah. Plus didask.
Yes.
You missed your sigma for letters. Oh. It is?
It is the root. I'm afraid that I may be doing this
It's an
wrong.
irregular. It's an irregular shape. Yeah. She got me in trouble.
Getting me in trouble already.
Report to this down around.
Okay, yeah, but it's still for this, it's still in the first principle part.
When does it go off the rails for
It will go off the rails,
The aorist?
so to speak, when we get to the aorist.
the okay.
Because we need to find out what the true root is before we add the sigma, and then the sigma combines with the appropriate letter in that case. Third singular.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I can't remember. Three clips.
Amen. Ente. On. Pastime morpheme plus root plus secondary endings. Your aorist is pastime morpheme plus
The stem.
stem
Okay.
plus
The sauce.
sa plus
Ending.
ending.
My singers.
Mhm. And that's pretty much it. I do want to get to a couple of translations before we go because I know I'm running out of time. One of the things you must do for me is read page 54. Because we're not able to cover it right now. These tell you some of the basic ways that your aorist and your imperfect are translated. A lot of that will come out in translation. I mean, in the context of the particular sentence that you are translating. So the aorist doesn't have all of those different aspects inherent within it. It has those aspects that are brought out or are capable of being expressed in the aorist according to context. So certain elements in a context are going to tell you how to translate it. And then you have, the last thing that you've got there is on page 55, the imperfect indicative of Amy. We already learned the present active form. Now you have your imperfect. Amen, ace, ain, amen, eta, ason.
So you're changing the epsilon because you're adding? Why is it now an eta?
To be verbs in almost every language are irregular.
Okay.
But that eta may be explained by the fact that you have, and I'm going to be entirely off base, but this may be one way to understand it. You've got another epsilon being added in. It gets lengthened to the eta form as opposed to the epsilon iota form of the sound A. So if that helps you to memorize that it's been placed into the past tense now, then, but I don't think that that's technically accurate. But I like in technical wrong ways of learning things so that it becomes easier to learn. All right, your forms of the vocabulary to learn this week. Make sure you learn those 8. Hamartano, I sin. Follow, I throw. Estio, I eat. Heurisco, I find. Lepo, I leave. Montano, I learn. Pasco, I suffer. And fugo, I flee. Or fugo, rather. Fugitive. Let's try our hand at page 57, exercise 1. And I'll read it for the sake of time, and somebody can volunteer to try to translate it. Elusan, hoi, apostoloi, tous, doulos.
apostles do something to the slaves,
So
but I don't know what
it's,
the
so it's
first
an
word
aorist,
is.
third person plural,
Mm-hmm.
so we,
And she's got the subject for you already. The apostles do something to slaves. So what are they doing?
are losing,
Yep,
are
or
losing,
not are losing, it's past.
have lost, or lost.
Yeah.
Apostles
Or
lost.
lose.
Or lose,
Or loose or destroy.
lose.
The apostles destroyed rather, slaves. The slaves.
You can't say lost.
No, because lost is a different verb.
Yeah, it's not the past tense of losing.
Okay.
Loose
It's
is to-
very brutal.
It is. You could say loosed them.
Okay, lose
But-
the slaves, yeah, release
Yeah.
them, come.
Woman
Yeah.
are loose.
Loosely.
Loosened the
Yeah.
slaves. You'd have to look at the context for that.
All right, so anyway, it was apostles, what the slave?
Loosed
Destroyed?
or destroyed.
Don't know, you don't.
All right, so how about the next one?
Idiomatus Macarios, Neos,
Huius.
Pius.
So you saw Adaman or Adon in that little footnote over there on page 53. Adon
Oh,
is
okay.
from harao, which means to see.
Yeah. I saw the blessed sons.
Mhm. The second aorist active principal parts on page 56 you will need to look through because those are
Oh,
your
no,
forms
you're right.
that make pretty big changes.
We saw the
Yeah.
blessed sons. Okay.
Yes,
Where's the foot?
we saw the blessed sons.
There's gonna be a lot to juggle.
There is. We're starting to pile things on top.
Yeah.
And now this is why we've memorized our paradigms in the way that we have, right? And I'll end on this instead of letting you do another translation. Instead of memorizing each one of your forms by rote, we have memorized them by our endings and by learning to add particular morphemes, right? For the present, we have our basic form plus our person number suffix. For our future, we add the sigma as the future time morpheme. For the imperfect, we add the epsilon, the past time morpheme, or the augment, plus the stem, plus the secondary active. So we saw just now, lu, son. Now we can work backwards in the same way that we worked forwards, right? We divided our word up in order to form it. Now let's divide it in order to parse it. How many different morphemes are in this word? Instead of just telling me, divide it for me. F is the first one. Lu, who's next? Somebody else? Lu,
Sigma.
No, sa.
sa.
And then,
And then that means we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that he would probably say you've got 5 here because the sigma is its own, but we'll keep the sigma and the alpha together so that we know that it's the aorist. So here we have our past time or our augment. Now we have our stem. Now we have our sigma alpha, which is the aorist. And now we have our person number suffix. So if we were to parse this, we can take all of that information and use it for the parsing. What tense do we have? Past, but in Greek terms we have the
Imperfect?
aorist. We have the aorist tense because we have this sigma alpha. Now what person number suffix do we have? We have we do have a third plural, good, we can use that. But we also learned today that we have primary active and secondary active suffixes. And that means that gives us a little bit of information. What voice are we dealing with? Aorist,
Active.
active, indicative. We haven't really stressed the active part because we haven't seen anything but active verbs so far. So when you're parsing at the moment, everything is going to be active and indicative because we haven't gotten anywhere else. But we can divide our word up just like this. We've got the aorist, active, indicative, third, plural. And then we can go from there and translate. So luo means to loose. So the aorist tells us, or the active tells us that it's in the active voice, that the subject is doing the action. He, or they, in this case, they loose. But what tense is it? It's the aorist tense, so it's past, so they loosed, or they destroyed. Do you see how that works? You can do that with any and every verb. You see it and it's formed like that, and you start to divide it out so you know how to translate it. So yes, Steve, we do have to juggle a lot more things now. We've doubled the number of verb forms that we had overnight. But if we learn to divide it just like we learned to construct it, then we're in a good place. And that's it. For your homework, look through your vocabulary list. A, the new verbs. B is the first principal part, so that's just how you conjugate the verbs you've already got. C, you're really going to need to study because those are your irregulars. Here you see that gnosko goes to egnon in the second active part. Or that harao goes to adon. Lego goes to apon. Just take note of those. Do translations 3 through 10.
3 through 10.
3 through 10. Vocab 3 through 10. Make sure you memorize your forms.